Okay, good morning, my dear Berkshire Hathaway high-level professionals. Welcome to another coaching session this morning. I'm your host, Will Cooper, crazy principal broker. I hope you can tolerate more of the high energy, high intellect, and frankly, just being an overall perfect guy. My dad used to say all the time he was a perfect physical specimen, and which was laughable. But anyway, hey, welcome this morning. I hope you don't take yourself too seriously this morning. We can laugh, have fun, and learn something. I want it, and humble too. Yes, Sally. I'm, if there was an award for being humble, I know that I would win first place. Do you remember that country song, Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way? Let's see, what was the next line? Every day I look in the mirror, I get better looking each day. Okay. All right. Well, welcome, you guys, this morning. I hope we can find a lot of positivity. So I'm posing this question this morning about affirmations. They sometimes get a bad rap for being too, I don't know, maybe not authentic or sincere, or kind of too much hype and things like that. Affirmations get a bad rap sometimes. But I noticed yesterday I took a number of phone calls, and I had a number of agents actually just tell me negative affirmations. So can you give me an example of what a negative affirmation would be? Anybody? And make sure, Joe, that Mike and Kevin Larson are unmuted. Mark's unmuted. If Craig is on, get him too. Okay. But anybody want to share, what they often hear in this industry is what's a negative affirmation? So I just can't do this. Wendy says there just isn't enough business to go around. Okay. Leslie says, I hear I'm so busy. Okay. There's no inventory. Yeah. Very common negative affirmation. I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you. Okay. Another affirmation. Negative affirmation.
I got one, Will. How about, I'm not very technical, so you're going to have to help me learn this stuff.
Yeah. Well, at least they turned it around. They could learn, but too often we get like, I'm just not very good at forms, or I'm just not very good at tech tools. So what else? Anything else you hear? Kev, Mike?
Liars are liars.
Buyers, liars. Boy, I hate that one, to be honest with you. I mean, we love,
basically meaning I didn't ask the right questions. It's really my problem, but they always try to deflect and put it on someone else.
Yeah, I really hate that one. It's a bad habit a lot of agents got into. But yeah.
Sellers are greedy.
Yeah, right. We're talking so negative about our clients. Mike, you got one? A negative affirmation that you often hear agents say about this market or anything? Oh, let's unmute Mike Fundario.
I like Mike's in the chat. Dongs and
go ahead, Mike. Whenever I see you unmuted now.
Yeah, he's a co-host. He has the power.
Okay, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, I would. I don't know that I have anything new, but the most common one when we talk about it's obviously difficult. The market's obviously difficult, but the flip side of the market being difficult is there's more transactions being done this year than there were last year. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. So that's all I would add.
Yeah, very, very, very good. Anyone? Look, I'm looking for a couple more, maybe, if you want, but weigh in if you get a common, negative affirmation. Mark, do you hear any agents calling in?
The most common I hear is the market is stacked against us, two in favor of sellers. I hear that from buyers agents. It's difficult to compete.
Okay.
There's an imbalance in the market, I guess, is the way that I phrase it.
Yeah. Okay.
But if I'm representing sellers, I have a different perspective.
That's right. That's right. Okay, let's get one more. Negative affirmation you commonly hear. Anybody want to share? Peter, you got one? No? Okay. Peter's got one. Okay. Well, all right. Brooke says this market is too hard to buy in, so they just want to rent. Okay. Well, we hear negative affirmations from buyers, but I think I wanted to hone our sellers, but I wanted to hone mostly into what we catch ourselves doing. And so watch what you're saying, because it's really a reflection of what you believe, or at least at the moment what you believe. And I'm here to tell you that you can start to change what you believe, and sometimes affirmations can help that. So for example, I'll hear that, well, the language in the contracts are too complicated. Negative affirmation. Let me build on what Mike said. It's really hard and difficult and challenging market. So it's too challenging. It's just too challenging. But the flip side of that is there's an amazing opportunity to show value, and that you're needed now more than ever. If you don't believe that you're not needed now more than ever in the history of real estate, then come see me personally and let's talk, because it's the absolute truth. It's never been more complicated, more hard, but it's also never been the better opportunity in the history of real estate for an agent to rise above it all and show their value. So if you have a problem with, say, clear cooperation or complicated contracts or technologies moving too quickly and it's just too hard, flip this around and realize what the opportunity is here to shine in complicated situations. Look, surgery is hard. Surgery is complex, and a life is at stake. Well, you know what? That's not a whole lot different than what we do as realtors. A family's happiness, their stability is at stake. It's emotionally challenging to find property today and get a buyer into a property. And the process is complicated and complex and ever changing. And now is an opportunity for us to shine. So, our affirmations this morning should be this. First of all, I'm needed now more than ever. Everyone say that. I'm needed now more than ever. And there's no one better for the job than me. There's your other affirmation. Everyone say it. There's no one better for the job than me. Another one. I am perfectly equipped to handle the complexities. Say that one. I'm perfectly equipped to handle the complexities. Another one. I can master all the new form language. There's another one. Say that one. I can master all the new form language. Okay, so now watch how we mentally deal with this. Do we argue with ourselves? Do we argue and say, no, I really can't do that? Then try the affirmation again and start to watch how it will help you. I know it's really challenging. It does take a village. Jamie Roney says that all the time. Takes a village, takes a village, takes a village. Because it really does. What we're seeing inside of all of this is that it takes an awful lot of high-level professionals to reach the plateau that we're all striving for. So I wanted to remind everybody, Peter says, it's not hard to find property. It's just hard to lock something up and get your client's offer accepted. That is the challenge. More challenging than we've ever seen it by far. We've never seen anything like this. And so we're recognizing that it's challenging, but we're also recognizing that we're well equipped to climb that mountain, right? We got this. We can do this. And though we sometimes find, look, it is complicated. And I know that we could, with all due respect and bless their hearts, we could get a bozo on the other side. Okay? I get it. We could get a bozo on the other side. And you know what? Where would you rather be? In the bozo camp? Or on the professional plateau. So, I get that, but sometimes I think we find ourselves apologizing that we're this good. So let's never apologize for being this good. Let's have a positive affirmation about it. So here we go again with another form, right, Mark? How's that for a tee up?
That's good.
See, this is why we call forms cookies, because it's an affirmation, you guys. It's really an affirmation. we've been baking another cookie in the oven, and now we're going to bring it out to you today because who doesn't love a good fresh cookie, right? So it's an affirmation, isn't it, Mark?
Well, you're the best hype man in the business. I appreciate
it. You know who would challenge me, frankly, is Joe Lowry. I've heard Joe Lowry hype some stuff. He's pretty dang good. But thanks for the gold medal, Mark. I'll take it.
You got it.
So, guys, I'm going to show my screen. And we have, is Greg Call on? Does anyone see Greg Call or Sharon? I think we have Greg Call and Sharon to thank for this iteration of an addendum, don't we, Mark?
Yes, we heard them loud and clear, and we're trying to come up with a middle ground, which I think we've done, that can be helpful to agents and buyers that aren't as comfortable with the more aggressive release, non-refundable and release of earnest money that we discussed last week.
Okay. Hey, Joe, I need to be able to share my screen. And well said, Mark. This is a middle ground. Let me know, Joe, when I've got the thumbs up there and I can share screen. Good. Okay, here we go, guys. Okay, here's the addendum. So remember, Mark just described it. We have a non-refundable and release of earnest money. This is just non-refundable earnest money addendum. What's its purpose? To help win the bid against competing buyers' offers. That's its purpose. Okay, it's not as aggressive as releasing the earnest money to the other side, which does put in questions about seller default when you've released money to the seller. I mean, Mark, wouldn't we really rather have, if we could get the deal accepted, we would rather have this language all day, wouldn't we?
Yes, we'd rather have the addendum no longer applicable. We'd rather go back to the REPC, frankly.
Right.
But I think it's important to keep in mind where this all came from. I can tell you when the non-refundable and release of earnest money deposit addendum was established, we were debating the leadership team was debating, how do we get money, non-refundable money, into the seller's pocket as fast as possible? We were talking about the intricacies of wires and cashier's checks and how quickly they can clear, all with the interest of getting money into the seller's pocket to make our buyer's offer more attractive. Well, now we're kind of backing off that a little bit. And I think that's appropriate. I hope we back off it so much that we're back in the ordinary REPC and how that functions with respect to earnest money.
I took a call last night, Mark, from an agent who was asking basically for this language, that their client was uncomfortable releasing it. And they were contemplating that. And we have, look, the addendum, you can still use it. If you want to release money to the seller and you feel like you've got to do that and the buyer's okay with it to win the bid, this particular language is not releasing it. So here, let me read through it, guys. Follow along. Number one, no later than 4 calendar days after acceptance, which mirrors the REPC section 1, buyer agrees to deposit funds in the amount equal to the earnest money deposit into the buyer broker trust account. So pretty standard, mirroring what we have in section 1. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary set forth in the REPC, meaning it's recognizing other sections of the REPC that deal with how earnest money is non-refundable and refundable. Buyer and seller acknowledge and agree that, so let's say $2,000 of the buyer's earnest money deposit shall become non-refundable upon acceptance. The remainder of the earnest money deposit, say $3,000, shall be administered in accordance with the terms of the REPC. So this acknowledges that other sections of the REPC will continue to govern how earnest money is handled, whether it's refundable or not. And so it does not negate section 8.1, 8.2, or 8.3. So this is a middle ground between the other addenda that releases it. And now we still have non-refundable. So does it make the offer stronger? Yes. And that is its purpose, to help buyers win bids. So you've got another tool in the arsenal here. So any questions about that? Mark, do you want to fill in what I missed here?
I don't think you missed anything. We did the non-refundable and release of earnest money contemplates depositing the money as soon as possible after acceptance. This addendum, we deferred to the existing language in the REPC at the top of page 1 of the REPC, where the buyer is obligated to deposit the money no later than 4 calendar days after acceptance. We didn't want to get into a lesser number of days because you run into weekends and holidays, and that's what the drafters of the REPC ran into when they settled on 4 days. We decided that 4 calendar days was reasonable for this addendum.
I mean, I really like it. I know on the buyer side, we'd all like to go back to the normal world, but there's no end in sight to this overly competitive market with extremely low inventory. You're going to find yourself competing. Remember the graph yesterday, 7 offers on average per property. Okay, so yeah, on average. So there's going to be properties that are 3 times that at times. So look, our positive affirmation in here is I have the tools to help my buyer win the bid. That's an affirmation. I have the tools to help them win the bid. Okay.
Well, Brad Burmis has a question. He wants to be unmuted.
Okay, you got it, Brad. Joe, do you want to help? There you go.
Got it.
Yep. Let's hear it.
So Will, if we use this and we make this earnest money non-refundable, do we in section 8.4, do we also write that same amount to be released in that section as well?
So 8.4 is the additional earnest money.
Wait,
So, right? Yep. 8.4 is additional earnest money. So the blank here, so the remainder of the earnest money deposit would be listed here. If you wanted to add additional earnest money, that would be in section 8.4. Is that your question, Brad?
So
no,
that's after due diligence where you would deposit additional earnest money to strengthen the offer.
okay, so
Correct.
I was thinking, sorry, 8.3 BI.
Yes.
Okay, so where you would write, say, a portion of the earnest money be released, even if the buyer cancels because of finance and appraisal, right?
Yes. So let's follow this language right here. The earnest money deposit be non-refundable. The remainder of the earnest money deposit, let's say that's $3,000, shall be administered in accordance with the terms of the REPC. If you had something in 8.3 BI, then that section would govern the way it stands, unedited. You follow me? So if you had, say, $1,000 in that 8.3 BI, then that would be governed by that section and become non-refundable after due diligence. This is why this sentence was so important. The remainder of the earnest money shall be administered in accordance with the terms of the REPC.
Got it.
You know, we are really trying, guys, to make the language as simple as possible. I know Mark particularly is very tempted to make a lot of cross references to a lot of sections pursuant to, right? Well, speak some more of that legal talk, Mark, you know, the
Yes.
pursuant to stuff. But am I right that we are trying to keep this simple? But that's a great question, Brad.
Yeah, we're trying in each instance where we can use language from the actual REPC that is familiar and that you're used to. We try to use that in the addendum as well, so as not to complicate matters. We can certainly make it a lot more complex, but there's no need to.
So Will and Mark, let me just play devil's advocate for a minute because Greg Call brought this up last Wednesday.
Yes.
Sure.
What if we use this addendum and we pledge that 5,000 of the earnest money will become non-refundable upon acceptance and the additional 10,000 will be administered in accordance with the terms of the REPC? When we receive the seller's disclosures and when we receive the title report, we find out that there is not marketable title because the seller has a $500,000 IRS lien. They can't clear title, so therefore they can't. The seller is going to be in default. Is that non-refundable earnest money still non-refundable, even though the seller can't perform?
This is exactly what Greg brought up, you guys, last week. If you were not on the coaching call, And I think it's why we really needed this language, because it's really, look, we all know if we release that earnest money to seller and we've got a problem as material as what Kevin just described, it's going to be really challenging to get that out. We're going to have litigation to get that out of there, to get that back from the seller. So, that's why this is a middle
But
ground.
the question is with this one here, where it becomes non-refundable, and then we find out the seller can't perform, is the seller still entitled to that non-refundable earnest money?
Mark, just take that one. I know we're going to be talking about default or reclaimed, how earnest money changes. Go ahead.
Right. There is, the first point to note is that there's nothing in this addendum that overrides seller default, section 16.2. So if the seller's in default, the buyer still has the remedies available to it under section 16.2. Now, simply saying that money becomes non-refundable, as we've said in this addendum, we actually say that a number of times in the REPC. If you look at 8.1C, following a failure to cancel by the buyer, failure to cancel based on due diligence, we say the very last sentence, the earnest money shall become non-refundable. Section 8.2B, failure to cancel based on appraisal, at the very end, the earnest money shall become non-refundable. So then we go back to 16.2, where we say that it allows the earnest money to once again become refundable, be refunded back to the buyer. Section 20.2 is another one I always point out, the risk of loss section. That earnest money is returned to the buyer. That's another provision that allows for the return of what had become non-refundable earnest money to the buyer. So there's nothing in here that prevents non-refundable earnest money from being returned to a buyer.
Okay,
Very well said. Look,
that would put a buyer's mind at ease.
Yeah. In other words,
Right. Now you have to understand, are you going to fight over it? Yes.
Yeah,
This fight might be a little bit easier because the money is held. The money hasn't been released to the seller. When the money is released to the seller, you're not really fighting over non-refundable versus refundable earnest money. You're fighting over damages, and your damages as a buyer in relation to that seller default. One measure of your damages is going to be that earnest money,
right.
$5,000. In this instance, the money is still earnest money. It's held at the buyer's brokerage, and we've all seen many instances of buyer and seller arguing over who's entitled to that earnest money. But the money is held in trust, and it gives a bucket of money for the parties to argue over without necessarily having to go to litigation and to hire attorneys.
I think a great way to say this is earnest money is like a chameleon. It changes color. It can go from refundable to non-refundable, back to refundable, and it can even be released even.
Right.
And it can even be released and then reclaimed. So it depends on when the question's asked. Linda, that's a great question. So you guys, when you're explaining earnest money, you got to explain that earnest money can change color. It can go from being refundable to non-refundable, back to even released, and then even reclaimed. So it kind of depends on what the timeline is and when we're asking this question. So, we're saying that we're making it non-refundable upon acceptance. Does that mean that the buyer forever and ever in granite and unchangeable cannot reclaim that earnest money? No. If the seller defaults, then they can reclaim it. And there's a precedence in the REPC already, which is why Mark is pulling out these sections that already say this. And it doesn't negate or nuke section 16. So very important concept to understand about earnest money. And yes, we are going to have to fight it out. So we're kind of making a strategy. What's enough to win the bid, but not too far that we feel like litigation or costs are more than the buyer can bear or would like to bear. Look, some of these buyers are like, they'll do anything to win the bid. So they want us to release the money. If that will win the bid, my goodness, release the earnest money. They're like, look, I'm not canceling, so it doesn't matter. Okay, but if we find a default, then we're going to have to go reclaim that because the seller defaulted in their ability, say in Kevin's case, for material, for title, to deliver title. Okay, look, here's my affirmation. Aren't we glad that we're needed? I mean, aren't we glad in a way that there's this high level of understanding that's complicated? So when we do get it, we can go out there and save a client, a buyer, you know, because if they don't have you, if they don't have a Berkshire agent, look, your guess is as good as mine. You know,
Peter had a question there, Will.
yeah. Let me, which one?
I don't know, it says Peter to everyone. I think it's Peter. I'll find him on the screen here. Yeah.
It'd be Peter Felix.
Oh, there we
Peter
go.
says disagree. Peter, do you want to weigh in?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes,
Yeah, go
There you
ahead.
go.
Pete. Go ahead.
yes. Yeah, so I know you guys keep bouncing back to the contract on these addenda, but anything that supersedes after the contract, the addenda controls, I thought. How are you now just saying, well, wait a minute, now we're going to go back to this section and we'll say, no, it is refundable back to the buyer? Because if someone sent me this addendum and it said, hey, we're going to sacrifice $5,000 upon acceptance, blah, 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 I'm
Mhm.
holding you to that. And that's how I'm explaining it to my client as a seller, irregardless if they have marketable title or not. If the buyer takes the risk and says, I'll give you $5,000 upon acceptance, how can you just now just bounce back into the contract when this addendum follows the contract and say, well, wait a minute, no, this money is refundable to you, Mr. Buyer? Because if I'm the listing agent protecting my seller, I'm putting a stop to you guys returning any earnest money to anyone and saying, we're going to jam this up because that earnest money goes to the seller because that's what the buyer intended. So
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, you guys. Peter is very street smart. Lots of, if you don't know Peter Felix, he's one of our top agents here in the Wasatch Front. A lot of street cred, and he makes an excellent point. The answer really is that addendum language only changes what it's referencing. So in other words, it doesn't negate all language in the entire REPC. So in other words, it does not negate section 16. Mark, do you want to weigh in on that? I think Peter makes a really good point.
No, I think it's a great point. I think it's a great point, and you kind of hit the answer on the head. There's nothing in the addendum that modifies or conflicts with section 16. We don't even address section 16, seller default, in this addendum. We're simply saying that upon acceptance, that money does become non-refundable, just the same way it became non-refundable in the section 8.1 and 8.2 that I talked about. Nothing further has to happen with respect to that money. There's not a condition on it. It becomes non-refundable. But as a seller's agent, you would still have to explain to your seller there are scenarios based on a seller default, for example, where that money is, even though we call it non-refundable, you may be subject to a damages claim that includes that $5,000 of non-refundable earnest money. And buyers will have to be able to, buyers agents will have to be able to explain to buyers that in putting this money out, there's going to be a dispute in the event of a seller default, in the event of any, if the transaction is not closed, there's going to be a dispute over this earnest money. Both sides are going to have to be able to explain that. If it doesn't close because of a seller default, sellers agents are going to have to be able to explain that to their seller, that regardless of non-refundability and release, there are scenarios where that money may be claimed by a buyer as damages.
And there's the simplest one where the seller just refuses to show up at closing, refuses to sign the closing docs, changes his mind, doesn't want to sell the property. He shouldn't be entitled to retain that earnest money if he defaults.
Correct. So Peter, and look, it's hard to find a seller in all of our transaction who defaults, but it can happen. It's very rare. So in most cases, yeah, that earnest money is going to stay with the seller. They've earned it, they've kept it, and it's theirs. But that doesn't mean that we're not governed by section 16.
Okay.
As long as,
So I
as
think
long as the seller performs.
well, I think everybody needs to remember that addendums only modify what they're referencing. It only modifies what it's referencing. That's why so often when you'll call me and say, hey, how do I write this? I'll say, in regards to section, and then we put the section. No, for clarification purposes, section 5, section 8, section 24C, you know, and then we modify just that because we want to keep the other language in play.
Hey, I just want to add one thing to this discussion.
Yeah.
Everybody, obviously there's more risk in this situation, right? There's more risk for a buyer, but keep in mind that nearly every contract we write has a period of time where that earnest money is non-refundable. That's how that contract is designed, for a period of time where the earnest money is just, it's non-refundable. But it's never been that the seller could arbitrarily just not perform, and then that period of time, that non-refundable period of time, is still, you know, we're giving the money back to the seller. Let's put it in these terms. The only, let's walk back. If we're continually offering non-refundable earnest money and the seller gets to just take it and not do anything and not close, if that were the case, I would list my home every Monday. I would put it under contract by Wednesday. I would take their non-refundable earnest money, maybe wait a week and just say I'm not selling, give them the middle finger, put the home back on the market maybe in 4 or 5 days, and just repeat the process because there's no problems, right? That's just what I get to do. Now that's painting the problem in an extreme, but in order to accept that the seller always gets their earnest money no matter what, you have to accept that as well. So the seller has responsibilities, and if they fail, they don't get to keep stuff. Unless we go on an addendum and say, no matter what happens, the seller cannot perform, you still get to keep the earnest money. I mean, who would even do that, right? You would have to actually go and use that deliberate language in order for the seller to just arbitrarily keep money when they don't perform.
Yeah, well said, Mike. Good job. Just wrapping this up, we'll put a bow on it and move on to another topic. But Rachel's comment is right. It doesn't say for any reason. And Linda's comment here, can we add something to clarify? Well, we did debate that a little bit, but frankly, it made it too complicated. It's unneeded. You know, other addenda, even from UAR, they don't do that either. They're not referencing all the other sections that are still alive. You know, so I think we're okay there.
Stacy had a question there too, though, about the buyer reclaiming the earnest money if they withdraw during due to due diligence. But no, that earnest money would be non-refundable on due diligence because it's strictly related to due diligence. The part that they pledged is non-refundable would be non-refundable. The additional earnest money would be returned.
That's right. That's correct. And good question, Stacy. Thanks for all the input, you guys. What about the opinion? Option money on a lease purchase.
That would be subject to the terms of the lease option agreement rather than the REPSI.
Right. We'd have a completely separate agreement there. This is an addendum to the real estate purchase contract, not the lease purchase contract. So if we wanted to combine that, I think, you know, we probably could have non-refundable earnest money, but that would be governed by that agreement.
Earnest money and option money are separate in that lease option agreement. The earnest money would be pledged up front to actually go under contract, but then the option money is paid at the time they take possession in that contract. So that would be non-refundable at the time the person takes possession of the home under that contract.
Okay, I'm going to put a bow on this because I think that was enough. I mean, look, I could go on forever. This is like dessert, you know. Tom Roney has a birthday coming up soon, and we were talking about what we had planned on a birthday. And I said, hey, why don't we just put it on that? I said, that's what I'd want for my birthday. I would want this meeting to debate all these things. That would be fun. He thought I was nuts. I am crazy. I admit it. That's step one. What to do about it? I have no idea. So, hey guys, let's pivot now. Thanks for all the questions and input. We're still listening. We're still paying close attention to what needs to pivot. I tell you, I'm really proud of our ability to act quickly and give you the resources you need right away. And so if we feel like you need something, let me know. Yeah, legal forms hype man Cooper. Okay, yes, I'll take that title. Everyone grab your book for a second. I want to use what we've been doing today as go to 168. Go to page 168. And it kind of goes along with communication. But I don't think we have time to do all of that today, since I think we'll wrap up the seller chapter today. But I wanted to just pull out a principle here. On my desk, actually, you can see it right here behind me. There's this sphere, and some of you have heard me talk about this before if you've come in my office. But on page 168 of the coaching manual, the lesson here is that there's a respect for different points of view. So we have that with inside our agent group, leadership group. We have that with our buyers and sellers. We get people who have different points of view. And I think what is important here is to remember that issues are not two-sided. So what could I use that's two-sided? Well, it's not two-sided. It's actually, issues are a little more like this, that you can see a lot of different points of view on this sphere. When you're in the discovery with buyer, seller, agent, and agent walks into Kevin's office, Mike's, my office, Mark, all of us, or clients, buyers, and sellers. Never minimize someone's concern. Always thank them for the perspective, credit the perspective, and recognize to really have a true understanding about anything, you're going to have to see it from a lot of different points of view. How damaging would it be if we minimize someone's concern? How would that affect the relationship? If I kind of said, well, that's wrong, or that's not correct, and what if I did that? How would that affect my relationship with a buyer, seller, or agent? I mean, maybe it's just so obvious. So what I've tried to remember in this lesson here is that decorative sphere that sits on my desk is a reminder that there's multiple perspectives on multiple issues, on all issues, frankly. So it helps remember to value different points of view. And I try to have patience in hearing about problems. And the time that it takes most patience is when someone puts a perspective that's not, say, legally accurate in our, like say in this forum, or a buyer who frankly just quotes some maybe lender guidelines that are not true or not correct. Very, very hard to have patience when someone's injecting maybe some points of view that are not, say, technically correct. Isn't that really challenging when someone does that? When they're floating a concept that it's not actually correct. So I've tried to remember to recognize maybe a broader view of what maybe not just the point specifically they're making, but why they're making it. And I can always celebrate while they're making the point of view they're making. So I thank my coworker and teammate Angie for being selective on that decorative piece. It reminds me of a lot of things I care about, like relationships. I do care a lot about relationships. So I'm going to try to tie a lot of this stuff together today, because we're talking about legal assets, affirmations, have a positive view. Let's turn to the seller chapter, and page, I think let's go to 98, and then I might back up a little bit. So go to page 98. And it's got some tips there on building relationships. Admittedly, I've taken a lot of different insight from a lot of different coaches and seminars through the years. But go down to where there's the list of the 6 items. So the number 6 at the bottom is to perform in the relationship. And that means that I think we're playing the role of the relationship in which we're in. You know, like father plays role of father, agent plays role of agent, surgeon plays role of surgeon, dentist plays role of dentist. Otherwise, it changes the nature of the relationship in which we have. And, you know, if you're trying to be a mentor to someone, then frankly, you perform in the way that your relationship is built. So be a mentor, you know, you're performing on that. Like, I mean, if your relationship is a friend, then it's kind of hard to be a friend when you don't perform the role of being a friend. Would you agree? So think about this from an agent's point of view and the fiduciary duty that we have to represent somebody. And at Brookshire, the better way, this is not checking boxes. This is being at the highest level that there is in the industry, and that we perform on that level. So right next to that, write reasonable care and diligence. That's my notes. It reminds me of my fiduciary duty. This is headline stuff, reasonable care and diligence. If I dig into the weeds there, today we've talked about just one addendum that's one of 200 pages in the forms manual, right? That's just one. But it's really needed today. Go up to the top one, and it says, be grateful. So this is 6 points of a relationship. This is a perspective issue, a lot like the sphere. And every valuable relationship we have, it's valuable for a number of reasons, many, many reasons. I think most of us who practice, say, gratitude daily could make pages of descriptions or adjectives to describe our most valuable relationships. Well, now let's grab our client relationship. And we started off today by negative affirmations. And I think the worst one in our industry ever said is buyers are liars. That would be the opposite of gratitude for any relationship, wouldn't it? How would I show gratitude for a buyer? How about today that we're grateful for their patience? Right? Can you imagine being a buyer yourself and your family uprooted the emotional challenges that are going on in their life, and they're playing along in this crazy market right now, making offers sight unseen? You know, I mean, it's crazy. So are we grateful for the buyer clients and the seller clients that we have? And what about the staff around us? And what about the support we get with inside our company? We have a lot to be grateful for. So those 2 points mean a lot to me. You might want to note next to gratitude that express gratitude has power, and gratitude itself only has potential power, and it usually just changes an attitude. I think that's good, but express gratitude has power. When you express your appreciation for somebody, you have power. You have power to change their day and sometimes their life. And so it shouldn't be lost on us. Every relationship we have with a client is more than a fiduciary relationship. It's built on these fundamental principles: gratitude, honesty, loyalty, listening, forgiving, and performing. I hope it goes without saying that we're honest, but you don't think that shows up in real estate law? Of course it does. We disclose our nature of our, like we disclose we're licensed, right? We disclose pertinent facts, material information. So we're honest about things. Number 3, we're loyal to lawful instructions and fiduciary duties, aren't we? If our client has asked us to only show the property between certain times, we are loyal to that. And we follow lawful instructions. We're also loyal about confidential information, which sometimes in this market right now is nuts. Like if our seller has said, please don't let anyone know my house is for sale. To be loyal to that instruction would mean that we keep the confidentiality just that, confidential, and we do not share it, right? Very important. And again, back to building relationship. These are the building blocks for all relationships. Kind of hard to be a good parent, friend, agent without listening. Sometimes people just need someone to hear them and validate their concern. And I think that's a very important skill. Yesterday, I took a very long call from a very trusted agent who's been in the business for decades, you guys, decades. And I hope doesn't mind me saying some of this, but she's frustrated. She's worn out. She's tired. And I think for the most part, she just needed someone to hear her. There was more to it than that. There's something to do about it, about our conversation. But for the most part, I think she just needed someone to listen. Number 5, absolutely critical to happiness. Guess what? I know this should be no news to you, but no one's perfect. So we're going to do things, say things, not say things, or not do things that we should. And we're going to step across the line. Please, I apologize a little bit for the Sunday school lesson here, but there's a very humorous moment in the Bible where Jesus Christ is asked how many times someone should forgive someone. And in a time where there's no calculator and no school, he said 70 times 7. Can you imagine how everyone looked around going, does anyone have a clue how many times 70 is times 7? I mean, it was meant to be mind-boggling. It was meant to be so big that you couldn't calculate it, you know? And it's a key to happiness, though, because we're going to trespass. And I do appreciate those who've forgiven me when I've needed it. And I try to practice this all the time. You know, a really good way to look at it is take someone you love like completely unconditionally. Right now, my poster child for that would be Easton Cooper Andrus. He's my 4-year-old grandson. He can do no wrong. You know why? He instantly is forgiven. I don't even have to think about it. I don't care what he spills on the carpet, right? I don't care if he puts a ding in my new Corvette. He'd be instantly forgiven. Can we do that with our buyers, sellers? You know, I hope we can, and I hope we can with our own work family. So those are keys to relationships. And then that last one, perform, I think ties in today with what we were talking about. Any input or insight to this? Anybody want to share anything about these relationship points or life insight that, you know, or lessons that you've learned? Anybody? Oh, come on. I know there's a ton of wisdom in this group this morning about how to have great relationships. 490 times, yes. 70 times 7. Did I say 470? I don't know what I said. Sacrificial? You want to explain, Leslie, or? The golden rule, treat him that they want to be, they want to be how they want to be treated. You know, isn't there a platinum rule? Is the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated? I love both of those rules. It's recognizing, I think, different cultures, different perspectives when we treat them how they want to be treated. I've always really liked that perspective. Forgiveness. Kathy uses a word that's often, you know, said it in like a spiritual church setting, but I've learned to look at the word repentance in a completely different way. I look at it just like I can be better. I can be a better person. You know, I try to be better every day. And if you have forgiveness and you're trying to be a better person, a better man, a better father, a better friend, a better agent, a better leader, a better mentor, you know, wow, life can be really fulfilling, really fulfilling. Anybody want to talk about this? I'm here. I am trying to verbalize your own comments. I might not be getting them right. Anybody want to talk it out? Rachel, you must have some good insight about this. You've got so many good relationships. I'll tell you what I won't ever forget about Rachel is that when we came to make a trip to Moab, she went out of her way to make sure we had a fantastic dinner at the best restaurant in Moab. She put us up in a great place, didn't she, Kev? And made all those accommodations of her own time, not even realizing or knowing where this even would go. But she was building upon a relationship that look where it is today. And I commend you for that, Rachel, because you were very friendly and kind and thoughtful to us. And I'll never forget it.
And
We need
I
to go
also
back to
put
Josie
cold beer
Wyatt's.
in the fridge with cold beer mugs. Don't forget that.
Yes, you were very kind. What did you say, Kev?
Yeah, we can need a return trip to Josie Wyatt's. That was amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you also took me out to dinner and I appreciated it. And it was,
Yeah, we had a great visit over the Thai restaurant to pay back to the tenants that have been so great to you over the years too.
yeah,
It's always paying it forward is what you do.
yes.
Someone the other day said, hey, if you had to choose between being right or kind, which one do you choose?
Kind.
Yes, be kind. Yeah, I think that's how we build relationships. If you had to choose between the two, be kind. Yeah.
One of the things that I've always lived by is it's not my job to fix everybody who's wrong. Just accept, when you have to, that, there's a difference of opinion and, move on and be kind, bottom line, because it's not always your job to, if you're a black and white thinker and you can't see the gray, can't see that both parties could actually be right because of the filters in their life and the way they perceive things, then you need to back off and realize that everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
So Kevin, are you saying that we should try to be kind of right?
Yeah, be kind of right.
Yeah, kind of right. I like it. Kristen says it's really easy to get frustrated with an agent on the other side with how complicated our transactions are, but we need to remember our clients feel the frustration too. The best transactions are when all parties feel satisfied in the end. It's just as important to treat fellow agents with the same respect we give the clients. Very, very good, Kristen. I know it's easy to get frustrated with the other side. So, you guys, thanks for all the content today. I'm feeling a little more emotionally sensitive. I'm missing my good friend, Kevin Cameron, who was really, really good at being kind and a good friend to a lot of people. And I'm going to try to be more like that, and well, frankly, there's a lot of things I'd like to be like Kev, but I couldn't always tell him that, because he would sit there with that proud grin like, yeah, I know, I got it. So do you guys see, I put a picture up in my office of Kevin and I at the Christmas party in our crazy pajamas. We call them our sexy pajamas. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it reminds me a lot of things about Kevin, to never take yourself too seriously, but he was so good at being kind also. And he was really good at relationship building. He had a lot of relationships with a lot of people. He was very, very, very good at that. But anyway, guys, I'm going to put a bow on this. So we'll end in just a few minutes early. I think we've had a great discussion today. Thanks for the input. We love you all. I always say, we love you all. I know we lead with our heart. The leadership team thinks every day about what we can do to help you guys. And to remember the challenges that you're facing and try to be a resource for you. We have a really good thing going here at Brookshire. It's the best that I've ever seen or even heard of in the industry. Very proud of our accomplishments and realize that it takes all of us to do what we're doing. So I try to end every call when you guys call me with, I try to remind you that your clients are lucky to have you. And it's so true. They are very, very lucky to have you. And you represent the entire team at Brookshire. And we're proud of that. We're proud of your successes. So go out and have a wonderful day and have a great week. Continue to consume all the good content that's coming tomorrow. There's the broker roundtable again. And by the way, next week, Mike Fundario will be hosting the coaching radio show and TV show. So got some great content coming. We're opening up the chapter of working with buyers next week in the buyer consultation meeting, which is very pertinent discussion. So tune in for that next week. So love you all. Have a great day and a fantastic week.